Hi, it's Mitch from PickDawgz.com here with your first 5 inning picks for Saturday, June 29th, 2024. Of course, we cover all the games and do the first 5 inning picks in those. We also do today in sports history. Today in 1990, no hitters in both leagues. Dave Stewart in the American League, Fernando Valenzuela of the Dodgers in the National League. First time no hitters in both leagues on the same day. There's been no hitters on the same day, but it was the first time in both leagues there was a no hitter in the same day. And in fact, that season in 1990, no hitters came fast and furious. There was a bunch of them very, very close together. But of course, we're going to no hit the books today. We're going to blank them, and we are going to crush them good, crush them early. It's only going to take us 5 innings to get it done. Let's get it started with today's awesome full card. For our first game, we head to the south side of Chicago where the White Sox are hosting the Rockies. We cashed on the White Sox on Friday, but today it is Jonathan Cannon on the bump for the Pale Host up against Cal Quantrill for the Rockies. Quantrill has kind of been a very good story, and unless you've really been dialed in on baseball or watching my videos, probably might have missed some of what's going on here, as Quantrill's numbers have been absolutely exceptional, especially for a Rockies pitcher. 3.50 ERA on the season, 3.18 over his last 3 starts. You have to remember, pitches half his games in Coors Field, so the potential for big ERAs is always there. There's never a Rockies pitcher in contention for a Cy Young. Meanwhile, Jonathan Cannon for the White Sox, 4.59 for the season, 3.24 over his last 3 games. Neither of these teams hitting the baseball, and the Rockies generally terrible on the road. But I gotta say, I've been riding this Quantrill train, and I'm gonna continue to ride it till the wheels fall off. I'm taking the Rockies in the first 5. For our next game, we head to St. Louis where the Cardinals are taking on the Reds. The Cardinals evened up the series on Friday night, beating the Reds 1-0 in a game. Of course, I personally laid the run line in, so I ended up losing the game even though the Cardinals won. But the thing is, the Cards come with Sonny Gray in this one, up against Carson Spires for the Reds. Spires hasn't pitched all that much, but he's got a 3.45 ERA, but that balloons to 5.25 over his last 3 starts. Looking at Sonny Gray, 2.81 ERA on the season, 1.66 over his last 3 starts. So Gray starting to show signs that he is the Sonny Gray that we've seen many times in the past. It's 3 runs or less, generally out of this guy. And, the way the Cardinals bats are swinging it, you got to believe that he's going to get some support here with the Cardinals hitting 273 versus right-handed pitching over their last 10 games. Just 225 for the Reds versus righties. Good luck to the Reds in this one. I'm going to take the Cardinals in the first 5 of this game. For our next game, we head north of the border to Toronto, where the Blue Jays are hosting the Yankees. Chris Bassett on the bump for the Jays. It's Nestor Cortes Jr. on the mound for the Yankees. And while a lot of people were talking about the Yankees' demise, jumping off the Yankee bandwagon and putting the Yankees on their do not bet list, tell you what, the Yankees, they did not care. They knew they were 20 games plus over 500, came out and absolutely barreled the baseball on Friday night, putting 16 on the board, which we know they're capable of doing on any given night. Cortes Jr., 3.40 ERA on the season for the lefty, 2.25 over his last 3 starts, while Bassett, 3.45 ERA on the season, 2.00 over his last 3 starts. The Yankees hitting righties over their last 10 at 240, but the Blue Jays crushing lefties at 325 over their last 10 games. I gotta say, I know the Yankees scored all those runs on Friday. I think we go back to the Jays today. I'm going to take the Blue Jays in the first 5. For our next game, we head to Philadelphia, where the Phillies are taking on the Marlins. If you followed our video on Friday, we took the Marlins plus 1.5 in the first 5 innings and cashed as the Phillies struggled to get runs across the plate. No, they ended up covering the run line in the end, but they weren't covering it at the first 5 innings. Today, the Phillies go with Aaron Nola on the bump up against Rodri Munoz. We've seen Munoz go both ends of the spectrum. Either he gives up a lot of home runs and gets hit really hard, or he can certainly go out there and really blanked the other team. On the other side, Aaron Nola, I always believe one of the more overrated and overbet pitchers in the game, but the record in Philly games this season that he started at 13-3 say maybe he's a little better than I give him credit for. 3.39 ERA on the season for Nola, but he's been busted up recently to the tune of a 6.48 ERA. You look at the way these teams are hitting righties over the last 10, the Marlins at 227 and the Phillies at 279. I trust the Phillies absolutely zero. I'm going to take the Marlins once again plus a 1.5 in the first 5. For our next game, we head to Atlanta where the Braves are taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Gotta say, when you look at pitching matchups, it doesn't get much better than this. Max Fried on the bump for the Braves. It's Paul Skeens, the phenom, on the mound for the Pirates. Skeens has been everything he was built to be with a 2.14 ERA, 0.93 over his last 3 starts. He did get a super generous strike zone in his last outing. It'll be interesting to see how that strike zone is today. And of course, Max Fried with the 3.0 ERA, 3.31 over his last 3 starts. But we look at the Pirates hitting lefties over their last 10 at a paltry 154. The Braves only hitting righties at 190. So I think the bats really going to struggle against these arms. And we know that, as they get into the bullpen, the game changes and all that stuff. But I think when it comes to these starting pitchers, going to be a lot of swinging and a lot of missing. I'm going to take the under in the Braves Pirates. That's my pick in this one for the first 5. For our next game, we head to Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City where the Royals are taking on the Guardians. Cole Reagan's on the mound for the Royals. It's Tanner Bibby on the mound for the Guardians. Pretty even pitching matchup with Bibby at a 3.50 ERA on the season, 2.60 over his last 3 starts. Reagan's 3.03 for the season, 2.84 over his last 3 starts. So that's about as even as it gets. A couple days ago, we were talking about how the Royals were done for the season and how the Guardians were going to run away and were a World Series contender. Funny what a difference a couple of games makes. But the thing is that, I think that the Royals' performance has been pretty impressive. And I'll tell you, at home against these American League teams, absolutely tearing it up. But at the same time, the Guardians still are the much better team here, hitting righties at 248 over their last 10 games to 220 for the Royals. But against left-handed pitching, the Guardians at 290. And that's, of course, Reagan's is a lefty. I'm going to go with the Guardians in the first 5 of this one. For our next game, we go to New York where the Mets are taking on the Astros. It was the Mets getting all the breaks on Friday night and grabbing the win as Bregman drops a ball at third base, turns into what would have been an easy inning ender, what turns into a 3-run home run, and the Astros never really recovered. It was a horrible strike zone the Astros were getting on both sides of it, both at the plate and for their pitching. And of course, a manager ejection certainly was a no-doubter in that game. In this one, the Astros go with Framber Valdez up against Tyler McGill for the Mets. And, Valdez, 3.68 ERA on the season, 4.24 over his last 3. He has one real bad start in there, though. Meanwhile, McGill, 4.81 for the season, 7.82 ERA over his last 3 starts. Both these teams are absolutely clubbing the baseball, but one thing we've seen from the Astros historically, man, these guys hold a grudge and expect them to come out really swinging today. I love the Astros in the first 5. For our next game, we head to Fenway Park in Boston where the Red Sox are taking on the Padres. We easily hit our over in the first 5 on Friday night, but the thing is, I didn't really expect the Padres to come out and push the Red Sox around the way that they did in that game, but when Pavetta's off, he's really off, and we certainly saw that on Friday. But the thing is that today, the Red Sox, who have not been a good home team, go with Tanner Houck, who has been their best, 2.18 ERA for the season, but up to 3.44 over his last 3 starts, while the Padres going with Michael King, 3.75 ERA on the season, 4.60 over his last 3 games. So both these teams sort of in a regression mode. And, the Padres certainly did take out the big bats, which we've seen them do often on the road and really in general over the last 6 or 7 games. they've all been overs. But the thing is that in this one, we know that Houck has been the stopper for the Red Sox. And while I generally don't like the Red Sox at home, I think I can ride Houck in this one. I'll take the Red Sox in the first 5. For our next game, we head to Tampa Bay, where the Rays are taking on the Nationals. It's Aaron Savale on the bump for the Rays. It's Jake Irvin on the mound for the Nationals. As I say in this video, as I say in my other videos, as I've said on live shows and everywhere else, the Tampa Bay Rays do this every single year. They kind of muck around. Before you know it, they're at 500, which is where they are right now. Go to the All-Star break slightly above, and then all of a sudden they're runaways in the wild card race at the very least. You know, Savale was disappointing through the better part of the first half of the season, 5.20 ERA overall, but 3.77 over his last 3 starts. I got to say, Jake Irvin, real promising here for the Nationals, 3.13 ERA on the season, 3.18 over his last 3 starts. He's been really good, especially against the good teams. The Rays are hitting righties at 259 over their last 10, while the Nationals at 236. And the thing is, all that you can take all the pieces of the puzzle you want. All I say is when the Tampa Bay Rays are rolling, clear out. Take the Tampa Bay Rays in the first 5. For our next game, we head to Milwaukee, where the Brewers are taking on the Cubs. I love games where teams hate one another, and this is one of those where the Brewers hate the Cubs and the Brewers fans hate everything about the Cubs, not just the team, but of course manager Craig Counsell, who jilted them and left for the Cubs. But the thing is that the Cubs have been stinking up the joint lately and really not playing very good baseball, while the Brewers, they continue to lead the National League Central, so none the worse for wear with Counsell's exit. We look at Myers, who gets the ball here for the Brewers. The rookie, 3.12 ERA on the season, down to 1.04 over his last 3 starts. Meanwhile, Justin Steele for the Brewers, for the Cubs, 3.08 ERA on the season, 1.80 over his last 3 starts. So certainly playing pretty solidly. The Brewers hitting 247 versus lefties over their last 10, while the Cubs 259 versus righties. I don't care about any of that. This Brewers team just looks absolutely motivated in this series. I'm taking the Brewers in the first 5. For our next game, we head to Arizona, where the Diamondbacks are taking on the A's. Zach Gallen makes his return to the mound for the D-backs, while Hogan Harris goes for the A's. The A's have dominated games against the Diamondbacks, going 8-2 in the last 10 meetings of these two teams. Pretty surprising numbers for how the A's have been. Harris checks in with a 2.72 ERA on the season, 3.38 over his last 3 starts. Pretty solid guy flying under the radar here, while Gallen, 3.12 on the season, 3.95 in his last 3 starts, where he did not look good and the Diamondbacks didn't win a game in those 3 starts. But we know Gallen has always been a much better pitcher at home, and we also know that he was injured, and that's why he went on the injured list. But he's back here, and the D-backs hitting lefties at just 195 over their last 10 games. Even though they're hitting lefties at 267 for the season. The A's hitting 240 versus right-handed pitching over their last 10, but still, we know Gallen probably won't go far into this game, but he goes far enough to get us a first 5 win for the D-backs. For our next game, we head to the Bay Area, where San Francisco takes on the Dodgers. The Giants, getting the win on Friday night, and what we've seen in this series when these two rivals play each other, super streaky. Rare that you see a lot of splits in these series. What you see generally is one team, they just get rolling and kind of steamroll the other one. It's Eric Miller on the bump here for the Giants. It's Tyler Glasnow on the mound for the Dodgers. Glasnow has held it together pretty well with that 2.88 ERA, 2.70 over his last 3 starts. Of course, I believe in his long-term stuff, which generally puts him in the mid-4s as far as ERA goes, or he's out for the season. I mean, that has been his track record over the course of his career. Miller comes in with a 3.79 ERA, but in his last 3, he hasn't given up anything at all. The Dodgers have owned the Giants in recent meetings, but it certainly didn't look that way on Friday. We look at the way these teams are hitting the baseball. The Dodgers 243 versus righties and 277 versus lefties, and the Giants just 207 versus righties. I think they get to Glasnow in this one, though. I'm going to take the Giants in the first 5. For our next one, we head to Baltimore, to the ballpark at Camden Yards, where the Orioles are taking on the Rangers. Orioles trying to get a little bit of revenge after last year's postseason, where it was all Rangers in that series, and so far so good for them. So they've won the first 2 games of this series, including a pretty low-scoring game on Friday night. We look at, this one, it's Cade Povich on the mound for the Orioles. The rookies look pretty decent. I think, outside of that first outing when he gave up the big home runs, he's looked pretty good. Meanwhile, on the other side, Michael Lorenzen really having a pretty solid season here for the Rangers as well, with a 3.04 ERA. 3.00 over his last 3 starts, and for Povich, 4.15 on the season, 2.20 over his last 3 starts. So we knew that Povich had good stuff, just can't throw that kind of ball to Vladdy Jr., which is the bulk of those earned runs that he's given up. The Orioles have crushed righties at 292, crushed lefties as well, while the Rangers struggling against pretty much all pitching, hitting just 253 versus lefties. I don't love this one, but I'll take the Orioles to continue the roll in the first 5. For our next game, we head to Anaheim, where the Angels are taking on the Tigers. The Angels all of a sudden catching a little bit of fire, but of course, far enough below 500 where it hasn't really had a lot of effect yet. But they go with Griffin Canning in this one, so it's really going to be put to the test. And they're up against Reese Olson, who gets the ball for the Tigers. Olson had that really low ERA earlier this season. He got hit a little bit more recently, but still 3.35 for the season and 3.06 over his last 3 games. Can't really complain much about that, while Canning at 4.72 ERA for the season, 5.00 over his last 3 games. The Angels have been hitting pretty decently, but 225 versus righties over their last 10, while the Tigers at just 192 versus right-handed pitching over their last 10. And while the Angels' numbers don't necessarily show it there, the big numbers, the ones as far as putting wins together, are the ones that are showing up. The thing is that I can't bank on Canning to come up big and continue this streak for the Angels. The Tigers can't win this one. It's going to be a long year. I'm going to take the Tigers in the first 5. For our last game of the night, we head to Seattle, where the Mariners are taking on the Twins. It's Bryce Miller on the mound for the Mariners. It's Pablo Lopez on the mound for the Twins. If you've never seen any of my videos before, if you've seen other of my videos before, well, I believe Bryce Miller is the weak link of this Seattle pitching rotation, which is a good young staff. But the thing is, I think Miller, certainly is the one guy who kind of doesn't get it done. And the Mariners have always had trouble at this point in the rotation. Miller's got a 3.90 ERA for the season and 4.32 over his last 3 starts. And while those numbers don't appear all that bad, I believe his actual numbers are worse than that. When we look at Lopez, 5.11 ERA on the season, 3.71 over his last 3 starts. He's been no prize either, but the thing is that I do believe that he has that upside, and he always has the ability to really almost throw a no-hitter any time out. We haven't seen it from him recently, but I'll tell you, the way the Twins are swinging the bat and the way Miller pitches, he's going to have plenty of cushion to work with. I'm going to take the Twins in the first 5. That wraps up today's first 5 innings picks. Of course, I'll be back tomorrow with Sunday's slate of games as we close out the month of June. Of course, after that, we'll head into July. Usually a lighter schedule with the All-Star break and all that other stuff going on in that month. And then we head into August, and who knows, NFL, preseason football, and before you know it, NBA is back in action. We're in business. But anyways, we're always in business at PickDawgz, and of course, the business of giving out winners. Free picks, premium picks as well. My best bets are always my premium picks. I bet them all every day. You can use the discount code PICK for 15% off. You click on the premium picks tab at PickDawgz.com or click on the link in the description. If you're looking for merch like the shirt I'm wearing, the hat I'm wearing, or our new PickDawgz bobbleheads, which will be out around the middle of July, click on the merch tab on the website or click on the link in the description. Let's kill the books today. Let's make it a big winner. I'll see you tomorrow. This is Mitch. Thanks for joining me.